One day closer to game day. Welcome to the Sunday Live Show, playoff edition. Isn't that nice? Isn't that awesome to be able to talk about the Montreal Canadiens? Like, we're not previewing the Battle of Ontario tonight, Leafs and Sens. We're not going to recap. Oh, maybe we will
I
a little
mean,
bit.
that's
Yeah,
going to be a great series.
dude. Let me right off the hop. Are we of the same mind? Outside of the Canadiens Capital series, for obvious reasons, the most hyped up series in our own individual minds is the Battle of Ontario.
I've missed the Battle of Ontario. The last time we saw one was in '04. They
Yeah.
went from not playing each other ever to basically playing each other 4 times in a 5-year period in the playoffs
Yeah.
between 2000 and '05. So seeing it happen again, I think is going to
Yeah.
be electric.
Yeah, no kidding. Let's get into the nitty gritty here. Before we do, obviously, let's welcome in our proud sponsor of the Shaun Starr Show. Let's bring in a Silver Paw Dog. It's their Everything Warehouse pet sale event. You can find them at Gallery de Source, May 2nd through the 4th. And through the link in the description here, you can click on that and enter into the draw for a chance to win $200 to spend. And of course, part of the proceeds go to support SPCA West. So obviously, here we are on the eve of game day, Marco. The head-to-head. Let's get to it right off the hop here. Interesting splits, right? When we look at here's the Washington Capitals. On the left side, you see 47, 15, and 8. That's the Caps record through games through March 22nd. Since the March 22nd break, 4-7-1. What's interesting here is they're not scoring as often, and they're conceding a hell of a lot more goals in that short little window. That is about a 12-game sample size. But what's also interesting, as you see here, the splits is Washington's power play. So let's start there. Let's talk about the Montreal Canadiens discipline. How big of a factor is that going to be in this series to allow Montreal to kind of stay competitive? Again, here's the splits of that Washington power play operating at just under 34% since March 23rd. So let's tackle that off the hop here.
Well, I mean, the Canadiens simply just cannot afford to be indisciplined in this series. It's just you're asking for trouble. And this was a game plan even back in 2010 when they played them. Like, you just cannot afford Washington the room on the power play, obviously with Ovechkin there, but they've got a lot of other firepower that they could use. And I think the thing to keep into consideration as well is lesser teams like the Chicago Blackhawks took full advantage of the Canadiens' lack of discipline not last week to come back into their game. And so you could definitely see, like, in important games, how quickly just one bad penalty could turn around and just take that series. It's absolutely imperative that a team like the Canadiens, that is, in my opinion, more of a 5-on-5 tank kind of team, they stay at 5-on-5 and continue, running the lines and playing the shifts and trying to get the matchups on the fly. The moment you start breaking down games, especially on the power play, and slowing it down, that favors a team like Washington.
We spent some time on the program on the live show on Saturday talking about X factors of various degrees, right? And we're going to get into the goaltenders. We'll get into the defensive matchups a little bit there, Marco, on special teams as we look at the splits on the Capitals power play. How integral is that going to be to give them an advantage? And obviously riffing off of Marco put up the Washington Capitals forward line combinations from their practice yesterday. It's going to be a challenge, no doubt. And one of the X factors up front is this guy. It's Ivan Demidov.
Yeah, it's cool. Yeah, but I hope he was much better than KHL.
I mean, this kid's he's so happy to be playing in the National Hockey League. Before we get into you got it from the beginning. I always like that line when you delivered it, when he wants the smoke. And I mean, that line, he's delivered on it in 2 games, throwing his body around, picking up points, making plays happen, dangerous with the dangles and everything else. Like, obviously the league skews younger and younger. We're talking about a 19-year-old who's filled to the brim with confidence. Jeff O'Neill on TSN Hockey and previewing the Capitals and Canadian series the other night, he has bought into the Demidov hype. You're not hesitant whatsoever, Marco, from your side of the table, that this kid is he has the mental faculties to be able to absorb the environment he's in, whether it's Ovechkin on the other side of the blue line or not. That's got to be pretty cool too.
And again, like, I'm not an all-knowing individual. I don't pretend to be a general manager. I don't pretend to be a scout. But when you watch players outsmart their opposition at every level that they've played at. That's the kind of translatable skill that you can bring, that elite hockey IQ. And that's the same thing I used to think about Lane Hudson. If Lane Hudson was able to get quicker, to get stronger, his mind was going to make up for every other limitation that he could possibly have. And I think, we've seen exactly that. So I feel it's the same thing with Ivan Demidov, just getting used to the situation. He doesn't have any physical limitations. He's actually a big boy. It's almost 6. Yeah, it's basically 6'1", 192 pounds, 195 pounds. Like, that's a solid player right there. And he isn't afraid to use the body. So to me, I think it's very imperative that he get into this series. And I feel like even from a Canadian standpoint, like from a developmental situation, the reason why he was brought over early and burnt the first year of his contract, other than, getting to his next deal faster and making sure he's exempt from offer sheets when his contract comes to an end, is to give him that experience. So if you go into this shielding him, I think you'd be doing him a disservice, because if you're trying to play it safe with Ivan Demidov, then you're playing it safe with the possibility of winning.
When we look at, I want to take a look at what I think could be. Is it too dramatic to talk about make or break, and how important it is that this group here do a bunch of heavy lifting, right? Let's talk about the who's who of the Montreal Canadiens. So if you're watching this on YouTube, obviously it's in front of your face. If you're listening to us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, the notable Canadians under 25 and under with their current age, led by the captain Nick Suzuki at 25, Caulfield at 24, Gouli at 23, Slafkovsky at 21, Hudson also at 21, and Ivan Demidov bringing up the rear there at 19 years of age.
And the irony is you're going to be able to add guys to that are in the same age group, such as David Reinbacher, such as Owen Beck, so it's, Michael Hage eventually. Like, this is a core that could last you easily a good 10 years.
Yes. I mean, before we move on, considering that you brought that up, and knowing that, Laval is the king of the mountain in the American Hockey League after beating Belleville and tossing Belleville out of the playoff picture, Florian Jacki had himself a freaking year, man. When you mention all those names, Florian Jacki, I mean, I know you and David Reinbacher and everybody else, but where's Florian in the future for you here?
I mean, Florian looks to be projecting to be a very solid bottom six presence, in my honest opinion, a physical presence. I like that they kept him at center all year and really trying to develop him into a physical two-way center with scoring ability. I think that's going to be excessively effective. I think the projectable is that you have a guy like Owen Beck be your third line center, and then someone like Florian be your fourth line center, and then vice versa, depending on whatever happens. But that combination of skill when it comes to defensive acumen, physical presence, shooting ability is why Nick Bobrov called him a unicorn, because those kinds of players are so rare to come by. And again, I don't think that he'll necessarily be a core piece, but he's one of those pieces that when you have, it's going to cost you a first or second round pick less when you're building out a contending team, because generally teams have to go out and trade for players like that. If you can develop him now, then it's all gravy.
The term unicorn is interesting to me, because it's just semantics, I suppose, because unicorns don't exist, but Florian does exist, right? Like unicorns actually don't exist.
We're going to get into this.
No, I don't want to. I don't really want to get into that. I really don't. But whenever I hear it,
I think the premise is that a unicorn is so rare. Like the type of player is so rare that they basically don't exist and are therefore unicorns.
Yes, right.
So
it's like
that kind of player that can play at center.
Like someone says, controlling your own destiny. It's destiny. Anyways, I want to focus in. I want to pick your brain on the core group here, as you see on your screen. These 6 guys, from the captain down to the teenager and everybody in between. Pressure is a privilege. I subscribe to that line of thinking, but I also like naivete sometimes. Outside of Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield, that have been a part of a Stanley Cup final run from 4 years ago, part of me is optimistic that these guys haven't built the callus yet, that they're learning, like Caden Gouli, and we'll hear from Caden Gouli in a second. Like, I read a line from him about how much he loved going into the detail of the video session. He's like, oh, the Capitals are doing the same thing to us. And now we're like pouring in every detail ahead of the Capitals to break it down. So this is like a first time experience for him at the NHL level. What do you make of the lack of experience? Will it hurt? Will it help going into this building experience with how young these core members are here?
I don't necessarily think so, because for lack of, the pros and cons for lack of experience. Well, generally the con is, for young players, he doesn't know what he's getting into, very lack of experience. Yep. Although Nick Suzuki and Cole Caulfield are going to lead the way like they did throughout the season. But on the flip side, you have a ridiculous amount of energy and adrenaline that these younger guys are feeding off of that could help kind of upset or take over a game that they weren't necessarily. Wow, I've never actually been called a unicorn in my life. That's fantastic. Thank you.
Mr.
So
Niles.
I did not see that one coming, but thank you, Mr. Niles.
Yeah.
So one of the things when you look at this kind of team is, a guy like Kaiden Guhle is tailor-made. If he could stay healthy, he is tailor-made for this kind of series. Just incredible, strong rush defense, physical, can box you out really quick, active stick. And we talked about it the other day. He's one of the fastest skaters in terms of going backwards in the NHL. I've seen him skate backwards and keep up with Connor McDavid live. So to me, that kind of ability, very, very important. Lane Hudson, we already talked about it, the intelligence to take over a game. And I think the one guy that everyone is sleeping on when we talk about matchups and we talk about young guys rising to the occasion is Juraj Slafkovsky. He was specifically drafted to be this, to do this. And when the games get tighter and space gets limited and you need a guy to make the quick play or you need a guy to make some space, this is where his value will be at his highest.
And to me, when we talk, and we spent, a chunk of the show yesterday talking about X factors, I think there are so many potential X factors on this series. And I just wanted to, I want to hear more from Kaiden Guhle here in a second, because David Savard a couple of days ago announced that this is it for him. However, how deep the Canadiens go, when that ride ends, when he gets off, that will be the last time he rides on an NHL roller coaster, I suppose, if I'm going to go the whole way. And I know for a fact that David Savard was instrumental in helping make Arbor Jackie's time as a Montreal Canadien more comfortable. He had a very important role, correct. And here's Kaiden Guhle.
Since my first year, he was one of the vets, and he's like the team dad. So he's been unbelievable for me, and especially that last game there. Kind of wanted to do part of that for him, win that game for him, and didn't want that one to be his last one. So he's been unbelievable for the city and this organization and this group. He's been unbelievable.
Yeah.
So Kaiden Guhle,
that's what I was going to say. Also, Kaiden Guhle in his first season, he was the guy that they paired Lane Hudson with in his first two games last season to finish the year. He's also been really good for Jaden Struble, who's told me directly that his defensive game could be attributed to having learned and sat next to and played with David Savard. So for all the value that he brings on the ice with his contract, obviously he's had a downward trending year this year compared to last year. But knowing the injuries, I think it's understandable. I think he brought a significant amount of value over those 4 years to bringing up this defensive core.
So let's talk about the Montreal Canadiens defense. I was getting text messages from my boy Frank before we jumped on the live stream. I'm browsing the live chat as it happens right now. The amount of Arbor Jacki fans that populate the chat is quite obvious. Now, when I look at the Capitals, they've been closer to mid-pack in terms of 5-on-5 goals against. I don't know how big of a concern it's going to be moving forward. They're kind of around the territory that Vancouver, Detroit, the Islanders all kind of share. But
all the teams that missed the playoffs.
Et voila, Colorado and Vegas are also in there too. And we saw what Colorado did in Dallas last night, skating off to a pretty dominant 5-1 win to open up their series in Dallas.
But we talked about that. We talked about that, right? With Dallas. Dallas is missing Miro Heiskanen, right?
no Jason Robertson either to open up that series yesterday.
And he plays a strong two-way game as well.
Yes,
so you're missing key elements. And now we're about to talk about the Washington Capitals. Jacob Chychrun is not at 100%.
Correct. He left practice, did he not, yesterday? And he's not 100%. John Carlson is not the same defenseman that he once was.
Exactly. A little bit of a slower defenseman. And so that's the top pair.
Yes.
But then you got to go second pair. And their second pair is Rasmus Sandin. Not necessarily the most safe. And then Matt Roy, who has been very good for the Washington Capitals. He's to me the defenseman
I'm most shutdown guy.
Yeah, he's the one I'm most interested to see how he will play. But playing him next to Sandin will mean that he's got to have heavy minutes in terms of being able to cover. And then that third pair of Alexiev and Trevor Van Riemsdyk.
Exactly.
Trevor Van Riemsdyk is very solid. Alexiev is just, again, trying to find his place in that lineup. I am not sure about those two bottom pairs. How about I put it this way? I am more sure, and this is saying something, I am more sure about the Matheson Carrier second pair than I am the Rasmus Sandin second pair. My opinion.
Yeah, and they're big. Like, they've got three defensemen that are 6'3" or taller. They have some shutdowns abilities, as you point out, with Matt Waz, the top shutdown guy. He's going to play a shit ton of minutes. Rasmus Sandin, to me, I always liked him when he was a Marley, thinking that, man, maybe this guy's going to turn into something. Well, now he's a Washington Capital. And when we talk about playoff experience, looking up Jacob Chychrun a couple of days ago, bro, this guy's got 9 games, man. He's got 9 games of playoff experience. So it's not like he comes here with a padded resume, right?
6 games. 6 games of playoff. Oh, no, wait, sorry. That was Sandin. Yes.
Yeah.
9 games is not much.
So let me ask you this. Your point of view on the Capitals defense that has a mix of a lot. And we'll get into the Canadiens' top 6, and we know that Lane Hudson is probably the straw that stirs that drink. But when you look at the Capitals' 6, right, and considering that they had tremendous regular season success, when you look at Washington's defensive group, is this Eastern Conference Championship caliber, Stanley Cup Final caliber? Break it down.
I don't think that defense gets you to the Eastern Conference Final.
Okay.
I think Logan Thompson standing on his head can get them to the Eastern Conference Final. And we'll get to the goalies in a second. But to me, a team playing them right now, their right wingers are got to be licking their chops, because the left side of that defense is just not what it needs to be. The right side with a Carlson and a Roy and a Trevor Van Riemsdyk, that makes a little bit more sense to me. But when with Chychrun being injured, with Sandin being the less than ideal defensive stalwart defensively, and Alexiev being someone that you can exploit from a lack of experience, I feel like if Martin St. Louis is going to inverse his wingers, as he likes to do, I feel like Juraj Slafkovsky and Ivan Demidov are going to be able to exploit that right at the left side of the Capitals defense. And I think one of the ways that they can do that in different ways, especially a guy like Sandin, is to use their physicality, use that size element, because Sandin is the kind of defenseman, and I say this with respect, but he's the kind of defenseman that when it starts getting physical, he starts playing nervous, and he's more apt for giveaways, which is the reason why the Leafs didn't necessarily see a future with him and decided to go and acquire more defensively oriented guys in their lineup. So, when you look at the way that the Leafs are built now, Morgan Rielly was that kind of player for them. So they didn't really need a Sandin. But then when you look at it, they went and got, Jake McCabe, who more fits the mold of what they need on the second pair behind a Morgan Rielly. So Sandin, to me, is that kind of player that I think you can exploit. Alexiev, Trevor Van Riemsdyk, also guys that you could potentially exploit. I think, again, like we talked about, the defensive wild card for me is going to be the health of Jacob Chychrun.
No doubt fans in this market are very much ready to go. I think you know this outfit better than I do, but HFTV had themselves a little bit of a moment, courtesy of the NHL Network.
It seems like things are going kind of crazy and sideways in Montreal right now.
How is Goalie playing right now. What drugs is he on and how can I get them? He lacerated his quad like a frog in grade 10 biology class. And he's back on the ice. He's beating the glass allegations. He slapped some Flex Seal on it, and now he's playing again. Absolutely insane.
I mean, buddy, you're just living life right now up there.
Man, it's crazy. This city is unbelievable. It's I love the Flex Seal comment. That's my favorite one.
That was so good. Yeah,
that was
HFTV
excellent.
just does such good work with the fans.
Yeah.
Very, very happy for them and that they're getting their flowers of late on national coverage. Happy
Correct.
Greek Easter to you guys. But I will say, when it comes to Gouli, it's something I've said since the beginning. He's not at 100% either.
I know.
And yet this man is throwing the body like it ain't nobody's business.
But let's talk about this. You retweeted Tariq El-Bashir, who's been covering the Capitals forever, right? Their top line. We went through it a little bit yesterday, but apropos of that conversation into breaking down the strengths and weaknesses of the Canadiens' bottom six on defense, or the six defensemen: Ovechkin, Strome, Beauvillier, McMichael, Dubois, Wilson, Mangiapane, Eller, Leonard, Duhaime, Dowd, Radish. How big of a challenge is this going to be? Because when we look at the Canadiens defensemen, obviously experience is not something that they're going to be able to boast about. Their Lane Hudson is your Calder Trophy winner as rookie there, at least I think he's going to be. His ability to move the puck, his ability to make things happen, the amount of trust he's already earned from his teammates. He's going to be a minute-eating machine. Walk me through how Martin St. Louis, in your mind, draws up the defensive pairings. Does he continue to go with how he ended the regular season into Game 1, Marco?
I think so. It wouldn't be my call, but I think he does. I think reverting back to a Matheson-Hudson first pair and a Gouli-Carrier shutdown pair, and then having Struble carry the load with Savard on a third pair, I think is ideal. I think it's ideal. And simply just because when you start getting into this point of the season, I know we're talking about like what happens at 5-on-5 and what's going on. And, I just don't see it happening. And, in regards to the question about Reinbacher, I don't see it happening either, because the Laval Rocket are going on a run and David Reinbacher is expected to be their top pair right shot defenseman. And then you also have Logan Mailloux there. So unless Laval has a very early playoff exit, and considering that I believe their playoffs, because they finished first, they have a bye. They skipped that play-in round. So they immediately will only play. I think their first game is the weekend of April 30th, like May 1st, May 2nd, that weekend. So they got all the time in the world in Laval. I don't think they're going to call up Reinbacher. I would leave him alone, and we see where he's at next season. But in terms of defense, it's good to have depth. If they run into injuries, of course, they're going to have to make a call up, and then I guess knock on wood for Canadiens fans in that regard. But one thing to keep in mind is that if there is an injury, or if there is a guy that starts to slouch, Arbor Jackeye is ready and willing to jump in, and I think he could be a really good element in this series as well.
So why isn't he playing, Marco? Let's get to it. I wouldn't play
because
him.
He's not a right-handed. Because he's not a right-handed defenseman. It's as simple as that. You
Is
can't
it as simple as that? I don't think he's good enough, though. I don't think right now. I don't think he's as good enough.
I don't think he has. I don't think he's better than Struble has been playing of late. I think Struble has been looking like a legitimate, and this is his second season. So I say this is not his ceiling, but he's looked like a legitimate number 5 defenseman in the NHL, the way he's been playing, how good he looked playing next to Hudson. But Struble, to me, exactly has taken Jackeye's spot, has evolved, has continued to grow. And you got to go with what the hot hand is in front of you, no matter what the style is. And I think the weakest defenseman on the Canadiens at 5-on-5 has been David Savard. Yep. But the problem is you can't take David Savard out because he's so effective on the penalty kill. And people will be like, oh, all he does is lie on the ice. So did Hal Gill, and he made a career out of it. So
Amen.
That's the thing. So who takes Savard's spot next year? Well, we just finished talking about David Reinbacher.
That's right.
I wouldn't be unless the Canadiens make a trade for a top flight right shot defenseman. I think it's Reinbacher's and Mailloux's to lose. depending on if both are still around or if one's still around. We'll see. But I think the problem with Arbor is that he can't play the penalty kill minutes that Savard can.
That's it. And that's why Alex Gagne and others, I don't see it.
I think everybody thinks that if you put both together on the ice, that Arbor Xhekaj will give you better 5-on-5 play. The only issue is that in the playoffs, you need role players, right? You need guys that you can put on the power play, Patrick Laine. You need guys that you can put on the penalty kill, David Savard, Jake Evans, Joel Armia. Those are the guys for that. I think that Arbor Xhekaj only slots in if someone gets injured or if someone has a terrible game. And again, I would say this, but if he were a right shot defenseman, I think that he would be afforded a little bit more leeway. And just simply because of the depth on the left side, they have to go with they were playing 4 lefties in this lineup already.
Correct.
You can't play 5 and expect to have a transition game that'll be effective for any of them, because you already see Hudson's play dips a little bit when he plays on his offside. Gooley's play dips a little bit when he plays on his offside. Mike Matheson's play dips significantly when he plays on the wrong side. And that isn't, he definitely plays well enough in a given role on the left side, just maybe not the one he has now in Matheson.
Correct.
So nobody could take those minutes. Nobody could take those responsibilities on the PK yet. And I feel like now is the wrong time to make that kind of an issue. And when playoffs come in, and we talked about being disciplined with Xhekaj's history, again, not necessarily the best situation to throw them into.
So obviously we want to talk about Lane Hutson, the Capitals coach, maybe your coach of the year, the Jack Adams front runner.
Probably, yes.
I'm sure he's going to know Lane Hutson's name by the end of this series.
Line with Cole Hudson.
Oops.
and make sure I do not catch me if I do, because Lane and Cole, I will mess that up at one point because I've said Cole Hudson so many times over the last year. I'm going to say that name in this series. I guarantee it.
So let's talk about the contrast, Lane Hutson versus Mike Matheson, and the contrast in minutes. We talk about veteran presence on the back end. Obviously, Mike Matheson, David Savard, Alex Carrier can bring some of that veteran presence, some of that shutdown skill. I believe Caden Gooley's coming off one of his better games, that 2-goal performance in the playoff clinching win over the Carolina Hurricanes. Walk me through how you see the minutes being doled out. I'm very curious to see if Lane Hutson is going to start eating more minutes and maybe helping Mike Matheson out in that regard, trying to find a better balance between a young and older veteran leader on this team. Is that something that this fan base is maybe going to see games 1 through 4? Hutson starts to eat some of those minutes from Mike Matheson, or will Mike Matheson be really leaned on here in your view?
Mike Matheson's going to be really leaned on because the Canadiens, first of all, they're not going to have the last change. So they're going to be going into matchups blind unless it's on the fly. So if it's a game with, 40 to 50 faceoffs in it, stoppages in play, I wouldn't be surprised if Matheson's minutes went north of 25, right?
Right.
And the reason is that you don't want to put Lane Hutson in a situation where he gets caught in the matchup game, especially if you're loading up that top pair and playing him with Gooley, right? When the Canadiens show their lines, the Matheson-Carrier pairing is the first one on the pairings. They believe that to be their first line or their first pairing. I disagree personally, but at the end of the day, you got to get a player's feet wet in this kind of a situation. You know that he's going to be targeted. You know that, you brought up all those guys on the bottom 6. They are going to be gunning for Lane Hutson. 100%. Do you really want to give him more minutes on top of that before he can really get used to it and get his feet wet? So I feel like the Mike Matheson-Carrier pairing is going to be the sacrificial lamb through the first 2 games, and then they'll reassess when they get to games 3 and 4 in Montreal when they had that last change. My only thing, and I've said this to you, is I wish that they would just flip Gooley and Matheson.
Yeah.
So that Gooley and Carrier can take on the stronger load of defensive presences, and you can shelter both Matheson and Hutson to be more of a puck-moving, 2-way kind of pairing as opposed to trying to be your shutdown pair.
So I think we did a good job of kind of looking at the Canadiens' defensive units and the pressure and the mixing and matching of some of those minutes. On the other side, uh, the most often question that doesn't concern Arbor Jackeye is the Montreal Canadiens power play. Yeah, not bad. Get some good.
Two observations. Two observations.
Go ahead.
On that play.
Break
One,
it down.
how wild is it that the Canadiens coaches, being the penalty killers, are doing it with no bucket? They're just out.
Yeah,
Pucks
yeah,
are
no,
flying.
ballers,
They got
ballers.
no helmet.
Ballers.
Anything can happen there.
Yes.
No worries. Just absolute wow. And then
So,
number
yeah,
two,
yeah.
what I really liked about that practice, that power play practice, was the puck movement. How quickly the puck was moving, how much they were moving within their specific positions. No one was necessarily stagnant. Look at them shift, as things go. Everyone's kind of moving up, moving down. So that's going to be extremely important for them when they do their power play. This is the second wave, right? Like, you have Ivan Demidov. They're clearly looking at Ivan Demidov for shots here. And what I like about this, and I think it's going to open up the lateral pass and leave Mike Matheson open at the point on the second wave, is it's going to open them up to play maybe on the wrong power play wave, but they're going to end up playing the diamond formation that we wanted them to play on the first power play wave, the way that they're setting this up right now.
And you know what? Watching the two games from the NHL playoffs last night, love to see when Winnipeg just slowly take the game over, absorb all the body checks St. Louis brought, even after Jordan Kyrou went high. And that was a little bit of a theme in that Connor Hellebuck got beaten cleanly, I think twice on clean corner-driven shots before they ultimately prevailed. But when I look at the power play from the Montreal Canadiens, when you talk about who's going to run the power play, obviously it goes through Lane Hudson. How much pressure do you believe is on Juraj Slafkovsky? You touched on him, 30 minutes ago when we began our Sunday live stream here. Do you think there's added pressure on him with Demidov breathing down his neck and the fan? I'm not saying the fans get to the coach or get to the players, but man, the fans are craving 93 out there more often than not. How do you think that plays into Slafkovsky's psyche here going into game one on Monday night?
I don't think it affects Slafkovsky in the slightest. The two of them play very different positions. I think the only thing they really have in common, two things, is they're both top 5 picks and they both shoot left. I think that's basically it at this point. Slafkovsky, to me, would probably be a better net front presence if you're going to have a guy like Demidov on the power play. I think the two of them could and probably should exist on the same wave. So I don't think it puts a fire under Slafkovsky in any way, shape, or form. Yeah. What I think is that by having Laine on the other side, you're inhibiting fluid puck movement, because Laine's first 2 steps are probably his worst quality.
Yeah,
that and his fashion sense, but I'm not going to get into that. So when you look at what Laine can do, if he's constantly in motion, he's dangerous. When he's moving with the puck, he's dangerous. The moment that he either immobile or slows down, that's when he gets caught. That's when he makes the soft play. That's not what you're looking for. When you have a guy like Ivan Demidov, you can get him the cross ice pass real quick, but the threat of the cross ice pass, the knowledge that he could do it immediately will tighten up defense 1 and forward 1 to clamp him. And that opens up the door to bring the pass back to the point. And then whoever's there, Lane Hudson, Mike Matheson, can either take a shot or immediately send the puck over to Laine for a quick shot. And then you see if it's either a goal or a quick rebound that you can pounce on. But that level of improbability, not being able to see what's coming, I think is going to open up a lot for the Canadiens. So the Demidov plays on power play 1 or power play 2. I think we would all like to see him on power play 1, but if they're stuck with the idea of having Laine in that shooting position, then I can definitely understand if they double shift Nick Suzuki on the second wave, that the second wave could be as equally as dangerous.
Correct. I just listen from my own perspective, right? Like everybody else, you watch Demidov, you watch the confidence, you watch the swagger, you watch the fact that the book, a page hasn't even been written on this guy yet. So good luck trying to break him down and scout this guy. Good luck on that. I think that's an advantageous position for the Canadiens coaching staff. Maybe a little bit of a surprise element until it isn't a surprise element anymore.
Well,
and the
I like
other
that
thing
you bring
about
it
this,
up.
but about this thing though, is my own mindset going into this is I'm not scared, and maybe like if I was Colorado, if I were Toronto, a little bit more expectation from the media, from the fan base, because of who you are. You've built up this resume where people expect things from you. I think myself, I won't speak for you, but for myself, and I think for other people as well, I'm going into this series, man. Obviously, I want them to be competitive. I want them to win the series, but I'm not expecting big things. And that takes me to my main point here is I want Martin St. Louis, Marco, to pick his spots, to be aggressive, to not play it safe, if he sees that in game one, by the third period, the Canadiens' number one power play unit doesn't look organized, doesn't look threatening. In the third period, if they get a power play, Marco, I want to see him change it. Because again, I what's the point of being patient here? They want to win. I get it. They don't want to be embarrassed. I get it. It's a professional team with a lot of pride. But are you comfortable looking at it through the lens of you can expect the Canadiens to get kind of aggressive, whether it's moving players around the board here and not being scared and not defaulting to the easy thing?
I think that you're going to see a very physical Canadiens team, or at least they'll try.
Yeah.
It's to me, the first couple of games, you'll definitely see it. I think what makes or breaks a series is whether they're able to do it over the length of a series.
Right.
Right. And I think that's the key here is how long will they be able to play that kind of game?
Agreed.
And one player I'm very interested to see in that kind of a setting is Cole Caulfield. And the reason being is because Cole Caulfield is playing a very chippy, gritty game down the stretch. I think, his aggressiveness, his ability to zone in on players, to take that extra stride, stick lifting, trying to use his body to separate players from pucks, even though, it's not necessarily the most imposing. It's the fight in that dog. And that's the interesting notion I'd like to see. Like versus in 2021, he was a little bit more reserved, right? He was a little bit less physical and more of a dangler and a scorer. I'm very interested to see what he does now because he has added those elements to his game in the regular season.
We saw a couple of times it popped up when the Canadiens were trying to clinch before they ultimately did with that final win on home ice against Carolina. And how problematic is this going to be? And again, I'm going to go back to you retweeting Tariq El-Bashir, who covers the Capitals and their practice forward combinations. The Montreal Canadiens for a little bit here have been running around in their own end. Careless turnovers. Obviously, Mike Matheson seems to be wearing the goat horns for most of that stuff lately. Ill-advised passes up the middle. I mean, as you pointed out, this is a stacked forward line team. They are heavy, they are skilled, they are deep, obviously. So when you put those two things together, some red flags and some disorganized coverage in the Canadiens' own end versus Washington's deep, powerful, potent forwards. On paper, Marco, the way it's laid out, it doesn't look like it's close. It looks like it's lopsided in favor of Washington. How does Montreal close the gap? How do they close that gap?
They got to keep it simple. These complicated zone exits that Mike Matheson likes to do, that needs to go away immediately. You get the puck, you find your center up the middle, or you lob it out. As simple as that. And I think that's what they're going to need to do unless the ice is open and they can make a breakout pass. But you're going to have a split second less compared to the regular season to make a play. There's no way that Mike Matheson is going to be able to turn the corner on the side of the net and then just skate the puck out himself. He's going to be met with one, if not two, forecheckers right off the bat. So it's better to play it safe, keep it safe. I'm not saying the Canadiens have to play the trap, but at the same time, don't put yourself in a position where you have to make a panic move, especially when it's not there's nothing really forcing you to make a mistake, right? If it's an unforced error, that's not forgivable at this point of the season.
Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, by the way. Thank you. We're getting close to 500 live viewers. We're at 478. That's Marco D'Amico from RG Media. I am Shaun Starr, back on the radio tomorrow morning. Special time. We start at 7 a.m. tomorrow before Easter Monday. Always nice. Bro, you have no idea how much the 1 hour start time. Normally, I'm on from 6 to 10 a.m. on TSN 690, Monday through Friday. Yeah. The 1 hour time difference, Marco, is an absolute game changer. It's I don't know. I can't explain it because not a lot of people wake up at that time to do that kind of work, but getting to sleep in for 1 more hour totally throws everything up in the air. Now, we move past the defense on it. Let's talk about goaltending here. What do we know about Logan Thompson? Protest in practice yesterday. Do we know?
And he's got a non-contact jersey today, and he's not practicing with the Capitals today. It doesn't look likely that he's going to suit up in game 1.
Okay.
So that already is huge because I believe I'm pretty sure he was a 30 goal scorer this year.
Yeah, right? And he was a Canadiens killer in one game.
Yeah, 30 goals, 66 points in 76 games. Just and he's 6'6", 247. Just an absolute wrecking ball. So, that's a big piece. And the Capitals even have his brother coming up, who was an absolute dynamite player in the OHL as well. So, the Capitals draft well.
Do the Canadiens have the advantage in any 3 or any 4 areas? Coaching, forward, defense, goaltending. Let's start with goaltending. On paper, how close is the matchup between Washington's crease keepers and Sam Montembeault? Because I don't think Jakub Dobeš sees the ice in the Capital Series. No. Just my opinion. We'll see what happens. But right now, how close is it between the battle of goaltenders in this series?
I think it's pretty close. I think Logan Thompson benefited greatly from being able to play in front of a team that played well, but his stats are also very good. Like, let's not call a spade here. It's very, very good. And I think especially in how do we say, in spite of that defense, in spite of the lack of safe defense, I think it was, very difficult, for him. And you saw it down the stretch when they came back from the Four Nations. Thompson actually had a lower percentage in terms of saves and goals against than Samuel Montembeault. Montembeault actually outperformed him since the Four Nations. So that, to me, it's all about momentum, right? And I think that's the key when you're looking at something like this is it's momentum. So right now the momentum is good. I like the way that Montembeault has been playing. He's stolen a couple of games for the Canadiens down the stretch as well. I don't think they'd be in their spot without him. Just the one time I see, a guy like Logan Thompson coming back from an injury and coming in and playing, I'd be very interested. And I think we talked about this to a little degree. Make him move. So a goalie that comes off a lower body injury, you don't know necessarily what it is, but an easy way to find out is you make a move laterally. Yeah. If the push off is weaker, then you know that it's either a hip or a groin issue. If it's more of he can't do the butterfly fully, then it becomes a knee issue. And it's very easy to tell at that point, and then it's very easy to exploit. So if I'm the Montreal Canadiens, I am making Logan Thompson move as much as possible to really kind of pinpoint that issue and really take advantage of it. Mm-hmm. And if I'm the Montreal, if they have an edge in coaching, that would be a sure telltale sign to me. If the Canadiens, one of the Canadiens' prime strategies is to immediately test Logan Thompson to see where he's at. Mm-hmm.
Sam Montembeault, I've said before, his biggest fault is he is not. I agree. Thank you, Peter Cottonballs. That's quite the compliment. Thank you. When I think about Sam Montembeault, I think about a goaltender to me whose biggest flaw is his name isn't Carey Price. And for people of a certain demographic, of a certain age, who have watched for an extended period of time, they've known the Canadiens are successful primarily because of the goaltender. And this time it's a little bit different. And because Sam Montembeault maybe, doesn't pass the eye test to you sometimes, or maybe you don't watch enough sometimes, especially if you're a Washington Capital fan. Maybe you're jumping into a Habs podcast to see what's up, right? Maybe you don't watch Montembeault a lot, right? But when we look at the numbers inside the numbers, and look, I'm not talking about a Vezina trophy or being a finalist for Sam Montembeault. It's not what I'm saying.
No.
When we talk about goal save above expected and even strength, he's top 15 in the NHL. Yeah, he's 13th in the NHL. A goal save.
He was top 5. He was top 5 down the stretch.
Correct. And in all areas of goals saved, he's 4th in the National Hockey League. But yet, I can still make a statement. Like, I watched Jakub Dobeš's last 2. Hey, we're over 500 for the first time. Thank you, everybody. Awesome milestone. Can't wait to get to that 1,000 live viewer number. That'll be awesome to see. But 502 and going strong. When I watch Jakub Dobeš steal points in his last 2 games,
yeah,
I don't know Sam Montembeault. To me, I don't want to be disrespectful, but Sam Montembeault doesn't steal games. Is Sam Montembeault going to have to steal games for the Canadiens to be successful, Marco?
Sam Montembeault is the reason the Montreal Canadiens drafted David Reinbacher instead of a guy like Adam Fantilli.
Great point.
So, yeah, like
and the Connor Bedard draft.
Yeah, exactly. Like Samuel Montembeault has been stealing games for the Montreal Canadiens when they had no business winning them. So
that's very fair. That's very fair.
I don't think it's necessarily going to be a problem. And I think with a guy like Sam Montembeault is he's massive, just massive. All those snacks, massive.
Oh yeah, that's his nickname.
but the thing is like when you look at the way he covers the net, his agility, the way that he's able to track pucks. You know what hurts him the most, in my honest opinion? Deflection.
Tell me.
It's very difficult for him, and it's very difficult for any goalie, really. But it's just he gets when he goes to make the push to make the save. If there's even one deflection the other way, he's compromised, and it's very difficult for him to go back the other way. We see great goalies like a Patrick Roy, like a Martin Brodeur. Marc-Andre Fleury is actually really good at this too. He would jump over to the side. And kind of save himself. I don't think that Montembeault has shown that ability yet, but he's definitely close. Like, and again, like as long as the Canadiens cover the possibility of rebounds and or deflections, then Montembeault should be fine. But then you're asking a lot of that defense, right? So like, where are we with that? I just feel like 1-on-1 straight line shot, he's excessively difficult to beat. Like I don't see him letting in the goals, for example, the direct 1-on-1 goals that Connor Hellebuck let in last night. I don't see that on him.
I get it. I get it. And it was kind of shocking to me to see the goals that beat Connor Hellebuck. But you know what? The team in front of him, Scheifele to Kyle Connor to the back of the net, Iafallo at the lip of the crease past Jordan Binnington. If I could just make one opinion, Jordan Binnington is such a clown. He's such a clown, this guy. This guy's ready for a freaking goalie fight, bro. It's game 1 of the playoffs. This guy's skating up to center ice, ready for a goalie fight. I'm glad Connor Hellebuck said, a goalie fight in the playoffs is just dumb. That's what Connor Hellebuck said when he was asked about it. But that's Jordan Binnington, though, right? Like, that's the good and the bad with this guy, right?
But that's the thing. If you're the Winnipeg Jets and you know he's a hothead, then get him off his game.
Great.
And that's exactly what happened in the last point of the season. That's the one thing that the U.S. team I found that the Four Nations didn't do enough of.
Wow. Ethan Mods. Maron. Grazie mille, ragazzo. Do either of you think that the Canadiens will bring Arbor into the lineup of the series? Even though we've talked about Arbor, Ethan definitely deserves our response on Arbor Jackeye. Can he turn this series around with his physical play? I don't think you are going to want Anderson or Gooley fighting a guy like Wilson and potentially getting injured when you have an Arbor Jackeye. So let me ask you off of Ethan's question here, two-pronged from my side, okay? I don't want Caden Gooley in the box because he fought. Josh
I
Anderson
wouldn't mind Josh Anderson.
Dude, he beat go to hockeyfights.com. Watch Josh Anderson beat the pants off of Tom Wilson.
Well, with the Canadiens. He's also fought him when he was with the Columbus Blue Jackets.
Correctamundo. So why don't you handle this? Like, I am not taking someone out of a playoff lineup to put in a fighter because I'm worried about Tom Wilson's physicality or whatever shenanigans he brings to the table. Do you see it any other way from Ethan Mods here? Ethan, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Ethan. I think I see where he's going with it, and if the physicality leads to an injury, absolutely.
Yeah.
But I don't think, like, you got to think about it this way, right? Tom Wilson is known as a fighter, but Tom Wilson has evolved as a player. Like, again, also, I think he hit 30 goals this year, if I'm not mistaken, right? If I could be wrong. Tom Wilson, 33 goals. I think that the Washington Capitals need those 33 goals far more than they need him fighting.
Correct.
And I think that's the thing. That's the difference, right? So, like, I think losing Josh Anderson, no disrespect whatsoever, but I think we can call a spade here. But I don't see Josh Anderson fighting Tom Wilson as being a negative to the Canadiens. I think it would be a net positive, because then you got to go 5 minutes plus, because you don't know when they would only let him out at the end of the play. You don't know. And at that point, 6-7 minutes without a top 6 30 goal scoring forward, whilst whilst Alexei Protas is also out with injury. Yes. I mean, I feel like that's a really good situation for a team like Montreal, and then they'll be able to exploit it, because at that point, that second line is going to be destabilized. So I wouldn't necessarily worry about it. But going back to the Arbor question, I don't disagree that he may see time in this series, especially if it starts getting to the point of physicality, that may put another defenseman in a situation where they aggravate an existing injury.
I think, the interesting proposal, but what about the other side? Again, let me defer back to
Capitals are as physical as people think they are. First and foremost.
There was this early line, this narrative that came out from NHL Network, TSN That's Hockey was talking about it. Here comes the beef. Here comes the beef. They're going to try to run you out of the first period, try to impose themselves physically. I'm not I'm not worried about that. Like, the Canadiens are no paper tigers here. The Canadiens bring the jam. They're not afraid or intimidated in any environment.
Well, it's like people that call Nick Suzuki small.
Oh,
Nick Suzuki is 5'11", 212 pounds.
Correct.
That guy is a literal square. Like, it's...
Yes.
Like, I've never seen a 5'11" player be 211 pounds and being a pro athlete. Like,
the only thing I'm worried about, Marco, is the speed and depth of Washington's forward combinations.
Speed is what you need to worry about.
And that's where I'll bring David Savard back in. I'm worried it's going to be too much for this guy, and he's going to get exposed repeatedly. Like, what are you going to put him out there? When the Canadiens are down a man? Is that it? They're going to play with 5 defensemen?
The importance of having Struble there instead of Jackeye was just made more apparent. In my opinion, Struble has the speed, Struble has the absolute IQ, and Struble has the agility to be able to swoop in, and he has. We saw it against Chicago, we saw it against Carolina, we saw it down the stretch, to swoop in and assist David Savard quickly so they can get the puck out the ice when there is a rush chance against. What's going to be really good is that when the Canadiens get hemmed in their zone, that's when Arbor Xhekaj usually starts chasing the puck. A guy like David Savard will wait, right? He'll get the shot block. He'll use his stick for the passing lane. That's what he's going to stop. He's going to kill the play. And I feel like that kind of combination makes more sense to me than putting Xhekaj in that kind of situation. Now, if there's an injury or if there's something that's going to happen, no problem. But I don't think he's an insignificant player, but I don't think that he is, in this situation, a fit for what they need. If, knock on wood, Mike Matheson goes down with an injury and they have to move a guy like, at that point, I think Struble would play with Elaine Hudson. Gooley would go down to play with Carrier, and then you put in Arbor Xhekaj, to the left of Savard. But this is the thing I want to say. Like, people can argue, oh, they should have him in the line. Oh, they shouldn't have him in the line. The benefit is, in my honest opinion, they have 7 NHL defensemen that they can choose from. Because I think that he is a legitimate NHL defenseman. But you are at this point, in the way that this team is built, you have no choice to go with the 6 that they ended the season with.
How big of a problem is Lane Hudson getting run being a big focal point for the forecheck from the Washington Capitals? And
get used to that.
That's it. Like, part of me, this is going to be learning by being tossed into the raging inferno of game 1 of the playoff and being right.
He's going to play a hockey game, not going to hell.
No, bro. This is war, brother. This is game 1 and 40. This is what I love about playoff hockey is
I don't think
it's one team, and I'm just going to focus everything on you. I'm not going to let Lane Hudson beat me.
No, I don't think you need to worry one lick about Lane Hudson and the physicality. That guy was getting elbows to the back of the head, at the later parts of the season, would just get back up and still play. I don't necessarily think it's an issue.
Who cracked him last week? He got cracked. Very rare. Him and Suzuki back-to-back games.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact player. I was too busy looking at him. But yeah, it was a couple. Chicago and Carolina got a little chippy there, and
correct.
So Carolina, I'm not necessarily worried.
Thank you. Yes.
Yeah, and so I'm not necessarily worried in terms of can he handle it? I think that's been a question that everyone's asking his career, and the answer has always been yes. Exactly, he'll figure it out. Elite hockey IQ. He will protect himself without exposing himself on the ice, and I think that is the biggest key thing. Is that when you get this is the difference, for example, for a guy like me watching, when it comes to watching a smaller player on the ice, that's the difference between a guy like Lane Hudson and a Rasmus Sandin. Rasmus Sandin is going to cough up the puck because he's afraid to get hit. Lane Hudson will take the hit to make the play. And I think that's what's going to make a difference in the way that he plays in the playoffs. Sure, he may take a licking, but everyone takes a licking at this point of the season. And they all know that. That's the contract that you signed with the team, without paper when you get to this point in the season. You sacrifice your body for the greater good. And they better learn how to do this now, because if they have aspirations of playing in the Stanley Cup final one day, and Lane Hudson's going to be their number one defenseman, well, he's always going to have a target on his back. So best to learn how to deal with it now.
When we look at we talked obviously yesterday about X factors, the expectation, the pressure here. Pressure is an interesting thing. Like Washington, they went out, they brought in Mangiapane, they brought in Chikrin, they brought in PLD, Logan Thompson, obviously from Vegas, who was as shocked as anybody else. What about the intangible side of things here? Alexander Ovechkin at 39, the season he had, 44 goals, sets the new record, breaking Wayne Gretzky. That pressure finally off. Your thoughts on the Great Eight and his imprints here on this series? What are you expecting from Ovechkin here?
Physical dominance.
Oh boy.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh no.
Absolutely.
Oh no.
Yeah. And I think for the purposes of this series, Alex Ovechkin is a left winger, right?
Yeah.
For the purposes of this series, I would swap, if they're adamant about keeping Hudson and Gooley together, I would swap the two. Hudson plays left, Gooley plays right, so that Gooley can match up against Alexander Ovechkin. Because I'm sorry, and with all due respect to the player, Alex Carrier is going to get absolutely run over by Alexander Ovechkin if he's the guy on the shutdown pair playing the right side. Unfortunately, really smart player, really active stick. But when Ovechkin is coming like a freight train,
look out.
Exactly. And I agree with this. Having one of your six defensemen in the box for 5+ minutes, not a recipe for success.
It's the playoffs, man.
Yeah, especially in this kind of a setting. Are you going to overtax your defense some more? Like, is Mike Matheson going to have to play 30 minutes because of that? Like, you don't really want to go there. But if one of your bottom six players is in the box, well, then you can double shift Ivan Demidov and see what happens. Yeah. You can double shift Nick Suzuki or a Cole Caulfield. And I think that opens up possibilities, because it's also pretty difficult from a matchup perspective. Whereas when you look at the Washington Capitals, we know exactly who would be going in. It's the next man up. Whereas the Canadiens mix it up and match. They can do whatever they want.
So let me put this back up here again. The notable Canadians age 25 and under with their current age. Nick Suzuki at 25 leads the charge. Ivan Demidov at 19. You've got Hudson, Slafkovsky, Gooley, and Caulfield all in between. So if I'm asking you about intangibles and maybe Alexander Ovechkin at 39, what type of performance are we anticipating here? What about the intangible of the Montreal Canadiens that, and I'll put myself in that group, nobody believed that they would make the playoffs by and large on average. And the fact that a lot of people counted them out. I mean, in December, they were 31st in the NHL in standings. So they have that going for them, that inner belief where they as a group never counted themselves out. How big of a factor do you believe that will be for the Canadiens in this series? The inner belief of that room that they believe that they can win. How powerful of a force will that be in your opinion?
Yeah, I think it's obviously going to be something to consider. I think, belief is one thing, but I think you really start to believe as you play, right? You'll never really truly, like, teams will tell you that, right? Players will tell you that. Oh, we believe in the group. Yeah, there's like a level of belief, and then there's believing, right? And I think you only really start believing. I expect the Canadiens to be slightly nervous out of the gate, but I expect them to, give them a run for their money. I just don't think that they're at a point right now where, they're coming in confident that they can win with like certainty, right? Like they're going to come in and give their all, and they believe that they can win it. But I don't think that this is necessarily going to be a guy that's going to be coming up and just turning around and saying, "Hey, we got you." And I see this height differential situation, and I'm like, okay, like the 6'2", 203 versus 6'1", 202.
It's a wash.
That to me means a big fat zero. When like I'll look at that and kind of analyze it when we're talking about core or key positions. And when we're talking about core and key positions, the Canadiens at this junction right now are still a small team.
Yes. And it's also, Marco, as you know, like I've seen Montreal Canadian players that are 6'3", 215, and they play like they're 5'1", 110. You know what I mean? Like
that's
where I thought
on the team right now.
I had Peter Popovich in the back of my mind, the friendly
giant. I thought you were talking about Laine.
Drove me crazy.
Okay.
No, it drove me crazy.
That guy keeps getting beatings.
Bro, I mean, watching Laine along the half wall, air quote, battle for a puck and just use his reach and not use leverage or body weight. Anyways, I don't want to dump on the guy. I want to be positive today.
Yeah,
but like
exactly.
To me, like I don't care how big you are. It's how big you are in here. Are you like Brendan Gallagher is not a big guy, but he plays a big man game, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But you see, like a guy like Ivan Demidov could be like 2 inches shorter than an Alex Ovechkin. But I don't think so. I don't think he's the kind of guy that he's the kind of guy that could necessarily rough him up.
I like this one. Read this one.
I don't think so.
Do you think Demidov could rough Ovechkin? Give him the Russian rough up. What does that mean?
If you don't know, then you're going to find out at the end of this episode. Anybody who doesn't know what the Russian rough up is,
the Russian rough up.
You're going to have fun on Google.
I love it.
That being said, I don't think you want to play that game with Ovechkin. I don't believe that Ovechkin is a one-trick pony in any way, shape, or form. This is a guy that is top 3 in hits in the NHL, not by chance. This is a guy that can impact you on the score sheet, like, and from a medical perspective, he could injure you pretty bad. Like, I remember talking to PK Subban like 4 or 5 years ago, and he kept saying, "Man, a 7-game series, even a back-to-back against Washington in the regular season, it hurts. It's absolutely insane." And so when you have a guy like him, even if he's not, splicing you in terms of goal scoring, he's going to be an absolute horse regardless. What's going to be the difference maker is, are the Canadiens going to be able to withstand the punishment? And then once we get to actual scoring, will you actually be able to withstand that one-time shot? Will you be able to stop him on the rush? And I think that's the key, is that Ovechkin, in my opinion, not 100%. Not 100%. So just got to be careful with him. If the Canadiens want to be a little bit physical with him and maybe try to, make him overuse that leg, they could potentially get to a point where, he becomes less effective. But I really, really wouldn't start playing the physical game against Ovechkin too hard.
I'd see this a lot. This popped up in the chat throughout the course of our live stream today. Demidov like a Malkin. Watching Nikita Kucherov do his thing, by the way, another Art Ross for Nikita Kucherov in the Connor McDavid era. And if Ivan Demidov could look more like Nikita Kucherov than Evgeny Malkin, and I'll take Malkin too, don't get me wrong, but Nikita Kucherov, as much as as a fan, and hear me out here, as a fan, I can't stand the guy. I think he's a great villain, and he plays the role of villain to perfection.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of the best superstars in the National Hockey League. And if Ivan Demidov, we saw in the first 2 games of his career, like not afraid to, throw his weight around, finish body contact. I like that stuff.
Yeah. And Kucherov was a player that he compared himself to a lot. Kaprizov is another. He's got the creativity for it. He's definitely got the intelligence for it. He's got the skills for it. He's got the build for it. In fact, I think he is bigger than Kucherov. So he could definitely play that game. But you need your Braden Point. Right?
Totally.
You need your Steven Stamkos. You need your, I mean, I don't think they're going to get a Victor Hedman anytime soon, but you have Lane Hudson. So, you have the ability, you have the pieces. For me, when it comes to Ivan Demidov, in terms of style, I think he's got Kaprizov isn't necessarily as physical. I think he's a little smaller, but Kucherov has that physical element to it. I mean, Kucherov concussed Caden Gooley last year, if we all remember.
I like that.
So he's got that edge, and I feel like Demidov has that edge. Like I saw it in the KHL, he had that edge. I can't wait to see that edge in the regular season on a daily basis, but I want to see that edge in the playoffs. I want to see what he can do with his body in the playoffs.
Let me answer this question from my man Ryerson, proud member of the Shaun Starr Show. You can join the community too. You get early access to all the videos we put out for $2.99 a month, and you can cancel at any time. If you're looking for a good bet to make today on the ice, let me steer you in the direction of the 3 p.m. game today with New Jersey opening up at Carolina, with the Devils finished in third place in their division. Carolina, like New Jersey, limped to the finish line. Carolina went 1-4 in their final 5 games, scoring 2 or fewer in all but one of those 5 games. To make matters worse, all 5 of those games were against non-playoff teams. The Devils, by the way, played terribly. This is the 6th time these two teams have met in the playoffs since Carolina relocated there from Hartford. When was that? Like the late 90s, whenever it was. But as of right now, I think Carolina wins this series in 5 games, and I like Carolina to win the opener tonight. And as a matter of fact, I'm confident in Carolina. I would lay a goal and a half. So Carolina to win this game by a margin greater than a goal and a half.
I think this is going to be a very short series for Carolina.
They don't have the horses. No Jack Hughes. No, I don't think they have the gas. New Jersey.
Dougie Hamilton's not at 100% no matter what they say.
Correct.
Siegenthaler's not playing. Just too many injuries, not enough elite depth. I mean, Nico Hischier's done a great job in Hughes' absence, but it's just they're not there.
They're not
unfortunately.
there.
I feel like Fitzgerald had the opportunity to maybe go and try to trade for a number 2 center. Just not there. Yes, such a beast in the gym that he was scolded by Ska head coach and manager Raman Rottenberg for overtraining. Despite Despite that man staring us all in the face and saying that he needed to get more physically ready for the playoffs. You don't
I love
make
this
this
guy.
up.
I love this guy. I love this guy. And Roland Dubé summarizes it quite well. Shirt off, dad bod. I wish I had a dad bod like that. Crushing a beer after talking shit about Game 5. He's a legend. Still hate him, but respect. I couldn't have said it any better than that. You have read the room correctly, Monsieur Dubé.
I mean, look, so I found if we go back to the comment from Game 5 where he's like fans in Montreal freaking out because they won one game, I think that was kind of indicative of how sad the sporting culture is in Tampa Bay. Like if your team wasn't even that excited when you won one game in the Stanley Cup final in both of your runs, I'm really sorry.
Totally.
But I guess the Stanley Cup ring makes it feel a little better.
Correct. I got another bet for you if you're looking for that type of action. The Battle of Ontario gets going tonight at 7 o'clock. And the total here, according to odds makers, has it at over/under 5.5 games for Game 1. I think we're going to see a low-scoring game. Toronto has tightened it up defensively. The Maple Leafs are allowing less than 2.8 goals per game throughout the course of the regular season, which, by the way, friends, was good enough for inside the top 10 finishing. Stolars and Wall have been strong all season. Stolars would be my guy for Game 1 tonight. He led the league with a .926 save percentage in the regular season and third with a .214 goals against average. So I'm looking for under 5.5 in Game 1 between the Battle of Ontario, and we're going to lay a goal and a half with Carolina and their series with New Jersey. That's a 3 p.m. puck drop. Anything to add there, Mr. D'Amico?
Yeah, I see the Sens in this one. Definitely see the Sens coming up strong in this one with Brady Tkachuk back in the lineup. One thing to note for Canadiens fans is Martin Fehervary, who is the true top 4 guy that I would have in that lineup for the Washington Capitals, is also not practicing and is also injured. It doesn't look like he's going to be ready for game one either.
Yeah.
So the Canadiens have a significant opportunity in game one to do some damage, like a significant opportunity.
Don't forget, you can sign up here, right here. Enter your name, enter your email address, and just like that, presto, a chance to win $200 to spend at Silver Paw Dog. It's their Everything Pet Warehouse sale event. High-end beds and supplements, sweaters, jackets, so everything you're going to need for next fall, for next winter. Why don't you load up now and save up to 80%? It's their Everything Pet Warehouse sale event, May 2nd to the 4th at Gallery des Sources, 3237 Sources Boulevard, from 10 until 3 over the course of 3 days, with part of the proceeds going to benefit SPCA West. So there you go. We've got our picks in for the 2 games today, and we broke a new record. We are an hour and 10 minutes, more or less, into the live stream today. 512 live viewers. Little Pat McAfee clap. Pat McAfee. When I get to 1,000, Marco will clap. When we get to 1,000, Marco will clap. I clap at 500. Marco claps at 1,000. That's why we work so well together. Marco, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. And we'll be back here tomorrow again, live at 11 a.m. for an in-depth look at Game 1. And we will give Game 1 pick. Yeah.
We'll have the lines ready as well, projected
Correct.
lines and practicing in the morning. So we'll be able to kind of talk to that and really kind of get into the nitty gritty, because now we're talking prospective lines.
Yes.
But once we know who's actually out, it'll be very interesting to talk matchups and who plays against who.
So 11 a.m. tomorrow morning, live right here where you're watching right now, with Marco and I, with an in-depth Game 1 look with picks and a series prediction tomorrow morning right here live at 11. Marco D'Amico, follow him on all your favorite socials. I'm Shaun Starr. Happy Easter. Enjoy your families. Eat well. Enjoy.
Happy 420.
Oh, yes. Listen, teach their own. Enjoy your Sundays, everybody. Marco, we'll see you at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Thanks, man.
Take care, everybody.